Welcome to today's video where I show you how to make this little landscape sketch with just the basic 10 Neocolor II crayons. I'm really happy to have you joining me today for yet another Neocolor II video. As you know, I'm a huge fan of Neocolor IIs and I absolutely love to try new ways of using them and also love to use them for quick sketches. In one of my previous videos, I showed you how to paint some nice, cute little birds with just 10 basic Neocolors. And today I wanted to show you a bit of different technique. So again, we are using just a set of 10. And this is the basic set of 10 Neocolor IIs that you can get ready-made from the stores. But today we are not using a palette and we are not using these so much as watercolor, but instead mixing the colors on paper and I want to show you how you can easily mix them. Even if you are painting outdoors, so plein air painting, you don't need a separate palette, but you can actually mix the colors straight on paper. The sketchbook I'm using today is my Hahnemühle sketchbook, which is my trusted sketchbook for Neocolor II. I start with my usual style of creating a base layer of colors. And I have to give you a word of warning. In this video you will see a really nasty, ugly face of the artwork. So when I first build the base layer, especially in this case where I'm mixing the colors on paper, there is one step which lasts for a bit of longer time when it looks like it's been painted by a 4 or 5 year old. And that's maybe also one lesson learned from this video, and what I want to talk to you about is that very often when we create art, there is this ugly phase when the artwork doesn't look at all the way you've imagined. And the secret here is not to give up. So keep pushing and keep adding layers, and eventually you will get there and be able to create the kind of end result that you are after. What I'm doing here first is that I am, as said, mixing colors on paper, creating different areas, different color areas. So in this scenery there are different kinds of sand and rocks and grass and you name it. And I want to give first layer and I want to first create a layer of colors so that we have a good background that we can then start building on. So adding details, adding layers, and basically just have that kind of colorful canvas. And the reason I'm doing this is that once we start adding details and, for example, adding grass or leaves or other things like that, you will see that I'm using pretty similar colors throughout the painting. But when I have added different colors to kind of as an underlayer, the different parts of this sketch will still look very different, but they will have also something kind of bringing them all together. So what I'm trying to explain here is that at first you can, for example, see here that I have different zones. There's yellow and red and this kind of greenish, dark green. But then once we start adding details on top of those layers, those details are made with very similar colors. But because the under layer, the kind of lowest layer, their base layer, has different tones, we will keep those different areas and tones throughout the sketch. But then when we add similar colors on top of it, that kind of ties everything together. So stay tuned, you will see what I mean a bit later. But that's the reason why I am making this sort of very childlike looking base layer here, that it really helps us later on when we start adding details. I know many of you might struggle with painting trees, and especially with Neocolor IIs it might be a bit daunting, but I also have a really nice technique for you coming in this video, so stay tuned and you will see more about that as well. At this point I let the sketch dry a bit and then I will start adding details and kind of bringing more that realistic look to paper. And what I do here is that I use this brown crayon and black crayon, kind of those darker tones, to add some shadows. And I think this is one of the kind of basic ways of me working, is that I really like to add shadows first and then kind of see what kind of forms and textures I want to have around them. And here you can see what I meant earlier when I said that I will start using very similar tones throughout the different areas, but because of the different color of base layers, they will kind of keep their own characteristics, so it won't be blurred, even though I'm using similar colors then throughout the kind of next steps. Here you can see some really good color mixes that I've learned, and throughout actually this little sketching session, I had a color chart in front of me so I could check which nice color mixes I wanted to use. But there are some really nice ones. For example, with the blue and especially with the purple, you can mix that with other colors to create really beautiful browns or really beautiful grays. So that's what you will see me doing here, and that's why I also wanted to keep this relatively slow. So I think this is like 1.5 times the actual speed. So I wanted you to see which colors I mix together to create those different tones that I have ongoing on the paper then. I also really like this technique of using Neocolor IIs on wet surface. I think that gives wonderful, kind of very defined and very strong and pigmented marks. So that's also one really nice technique that I highly recommend you to try. I think I've said in one of my earlier videos, or one of my previous videos, that I'm not a huge fan of black. I don't use black that much, but I noticed that when I'm using this set of 10, I actually rely a lot on black crayon, because that helps to mute different colors down a bit, and it also kind of is a very good way to create shadows and different shades of gray. So even though I'm not a huge fan of black, I think these exercises that I do, sketching exercise that I do with just a very basic set of colors, I've learned to rely on black crayon a bit more. One of my favorite mixes you can see here is to mix that green with orange, and this emerald green mixed with orange gives you beautiful kind of olive green color. And I love olive green. I think it's a very nice color to use in landscapes and different sceneries. But since this set doesn't have it, one best ways to make it and mix it is to mix the emerald green with orange. So that's a really nice kind of tip for you, that try out that mix if you are unhappy with only the emerald green, which is a wonderful green but pretty bright. You can see me throughout this video kind of thinking which colors to use and how to create those color mixes that I really want to see on paper. Here I am mixing colors to create this kind of grass area with lots of grass. And how I do that is that I first add just that blue and orange on the paper, and then when I activate them and they mix together on a paper, they create the different shades of green. And then I start building on and adding different colors and shadows, and little by little this area comes together. So when you don't have all the colors in the world to use, but you have to actually mix them together, it can be a bit time consuming. It's a bit more time consuming, but it's also a wonderfully creative process. And I think it's so rewarding when you then see your vision come alive and you see all those beautiful new colors that you've mixed, and actually that the vision that you had earlier or to start with, you see it coming together. So if you have this basic set of 10, or if you have a larger set, I still highly recommend you to kind of separate these 10 crayons and give it a try. Challenge yourself a bit and challenge your creativity. And I also love how you learn about color theory all the time. So obviously many of us, of course, know the basic color theory and it helps a lot. But I think we learn as we go. And when you see all the wonderful color mixes that you can actually create with just 10 crayons, it's just mind-blowing. And at least I find it really inspiring. And it feeds my creativity a lot. So here I am now returning to the trees, and I first want to add some shadows to the tree trunks, and then I start building that foliage. And when I'm building the different color layers and trying to draw all the leaves to the trees, here is one of my favorite techniques. So first I kind of very loosely mix different colors that I'd like to see and different colors that I know mix beautiful greens. And you can see that I'm kind of very loosely and very just kind of intuitively adding the color here and there and not adding the same amount of each color everywhere. But then I take my brush and some water and I just dab into the color. So I'm not mixing everything together, but I kind of drop water here and there, and I don't even activate all the pigment. But overall, I think this is a very good strategy and technique if you want to create leaves. So you kind of don't mix everything together, but you let the colors spread where they are and where you've added them. And when you add a bit of, and when you don't activate all the color and all the pigment, then you can have that kind of variety and that really nice texture that gives you the impression of many, many leaves. And then I also add some crayon straight to the wet surface. And here again, I'm using very weird different colors. So I'm adding blue and yellow and then green as well. But this means that you get that impression of different colors. So it doesn't always have to be photorealistic, but you are actually just giving the impression that when someone looks at this, they actually realize it's leaves. So this is one of my favorite techniques of kind of drawing and painting leaves with Neocolor IIs. And if you haven't tried this, I hope that you will give it a try and let me know how you find it. But this is also a lot of fun, so it's just kind of add the color here and there, and then you dab some water on top and drop water there and let the colors and pigments do their magic. Then I activate that black on the tree, and you can see that I'm kind of spreading it around. Beautiful brown shades that we had on the base layer, those kind of just come through. And I'm again using technique where I use crayon on wet surface to add a bit more of those branches. And I was actually really happy with how these trees turned out. I think they came out to be exactly as I hoped and I visioned them to be. When I was working on this kind of city silhouette that I had in the background, I wanted to keep it very loose and just give impression that there are some buildings there, but I didn't want to give them too much kind of definition and make them too detailed, because that's also one way to kind of build the perspective and give the impression that they are further ahead and not in the front of the picture. But I did struggle a bit. You will see that I'm kind of adding color, and then I'm using the water brush and then using the brush to mix everything together, and I kind of keep getting back to these and not really getting them where I wanted them to be in the end. But this is often my process when I'm sketching and when I'm trying out different techniques and making some really relaxing art, that I want to give myself the joy of experimenting and also the joy of getting things wrong at times. So not everything needs to be perfect at all times, but we learn all the time. And I think that's the best thing whenever I am drawing. So we are approaching the end of the sketching process, and I hope that you've enjoyed watching me do this, and I hope this inspires you to also test the limited palette challenge. So I'm challenging you to try out limited palette of Neocolor IIs and let me know how it feels. Here is a close-up of the final kind of end results and all the different textures and colors that I created. I'm actually really happy with the outcome and I'm looking forward to making another one of these also in the future. Thank you so much for watching today, and I will see you in my next video. Bye for now.